Hello everyone. In this session, we are going to talk about single sign-on and how we can implement it using OpenID Connect. We are going to talk about what is SSO, then we'll be talking about what is OpenID Connect, and then we will see a demo between Salesforce and Google. Google would be an identity provider here, and Salesforce would be a service provider. Salesforce would redirect to Google to get the identity of the user and then try to create a user or subsequently update a user based on the data provided by Google. Yeah, let's start. And let's start. So, firstly, what is SSO? So, SSO is basically you'll have single credentials and you can log into multiple orgs or multiple different applications. So, single sign-on lets users access authorized network resources with one login. You validate username password against your corporate user database rather than Salesforce managing separate passwords for each resource. So you will have single credentials. Maybe that would be of your identity provider, and you can use that to log into multiple applications. Whoever is implementing SSO with that identity. So Salesforce offers two ways to use SSO, that is federated SSO and delegated SSO. Federated SSO is a org-wide SSO and would be implemented for all the users. Delegated SSO is more of a profile level SSO. And on the profile level, we will have a permission is single sign-on enabled. If that is enabled, then only the SSO will be enabled for that user. Yes, and you can go ahead with the article to read more about federated and delegated SSO. Our focus here is what is OpenID Connect. So OpenID Connect is just a simple identity layer on the top of OAuth 2.0 protocol. It allows clients to verify the identity of the end user based on the authentication performed by the authorization server, as well as to obtain basic profile information about the end user in a REST-like manner. So basically, it's OpenID Connect provides an additional layer of security on the level on the top of the OAuth 2.0 protocol, and generally people use it to use more secure protocols on the top of OAuth 2.0. OpenID Connect allows clients of all type, including web-based, mobile, and JavaScript clients, to request, receive information about authenticated sessions and end users. And we can use the OpenID Connect in Salesforce to get an additional layer of identity layer of security for SSO. And we will just see the demo between Salesforce and Google, where Google would be the identity provider. So let's start. So yeah, I've opened an incognito window. So I'll just search for Google Console, Google Cloud Console. So this is basically a Google workspace, right? And then firstly, we will create a new project here. So just let's just name it Salesforce OpenID Connect SSO. Yep, and let's create that project. So in this console, Google provides many other options. You can use Google APIs, create Google APIs to use Google services like Google Maps, etc. You can use identity access management, and you can use other Google services. You can run cloud functions, etc. So our main focus would be here to use the like OpenID Connect and create a connected app in Google Cloud and use that credentials to authenticate with Salesforce and establish SSO. So firstly, you'll have to click on API and services and you'll be redirected to this menu. If I click on OAuth consent screen, so it will give us an option uh, to set up the user type. I'll choose external. since we will make a request, then we'll be redirected to this page. We'll have to give a name, app name. Let's give it SSO, Salesforce. It's asking for user support email. I'll give my email, and I guess we don't need to provide anything in app domain. Let's just give for authorized domain as salesforce.com. Contact information is my email, and save and continue. It's asking for scopes. Let's just continue. Test users, and here's the summary. So we have successfully completed the OAuth consent screen. Let's just go back to the dashboard and click on credentials now. So we need OAuth 2.0 client IDs so that we can use that to create an auth provider in our Salesforce org. So let's just click on client credentials, click OAuth client ID, select application type. It would be a web application. The name would be SSO, Salesforce Google. Let's just give it that. And we would have to provide the authorized redirect URIs, but let's just maybe you give it later. And after we click create, our client ID and client secret are created. Let's just download the JSON for that and click in show on folder. Open with Visual Studio Code. So here are the client ID and the client secret. I'll quickly go back to the screen and open this, and we have the client ID and the client secret here. Let's just copy it and go back to Salesforce. Now in Salesforce, search for auth providers. You'll get that under identity and click on that. We will have to create a new auth provider in Salesforce. The provider type is OpenID Connect, and name would be Google Sso. The consumer keys are that we copied from the Google console, and we'll copy the client secret and paste it to the consumer secret. Now we have two fields, authorize endpoint URL and token endpoint URL. We will just go back to that JSON we downloaded, and this is the authorized URL. We'll just copy that. I'll pin it in the comment section, and so that you don't have to find it and you can just copy it from there. We have the token URL. Let's just copy that. Yes, now we have the user info endpoint URL. It's not a mandatory field, but for the OpenID Connect, we'll have to provide it. So I've just copied it here, and so this is the URL which would be required to know more about the user info, so that the service provider can make a call and know more about the user info. Then we have the registration handler. So we will use the automatically create a registration handler on save, execute registration. We will select our user, which is the admin user. And this is needed like once we get the credentials. So on what basis do we want to create a user in Salesforce? So I'll show you, and we can go through the code in this session. Let's just save it. After saving, we will get the callback URL. Now we will go back to our Google console, and we will authorize this callback URL in the console. Let's just click on credentials, this app. Yeah, we have the authorize redirect URLs. We'll just paste it here. Firstly, let's just authorize the domain and then the callback URL and then save it. So OAuth client has been saved. Yes, so now we will go to my domain and we will enable that SSO. Uh, Click edit on the authentication configuration and you'll have an option to enable the Google SSO. Just check it and click on save. Yeah, now go back to the auth provider. So this is the class which is created automatically by Salesforce. So I've already edited the class, so I'll just quickly explain it and we can then copy paste the code. So that class needs to implement the auth.registration handler interface. So if I open the Salesforce documentation, the registration handler methods provide two, these are the two methods which are being provided under this interface. First is the create user, the second is the update user. So the create user is called the first time the user logs in, and the update user is called when if the user has already logged in and his information is already present. So the update user method would be called in. So let's see the logic in the create user. We would have the data that is being provided by Google in the data variable. So we will just check first. We will check if the based on the email, if the email already exists, then we have the user. Just return the username uh, of this and return that user. Else we'll create a new user. We are I'm just starting a fake domain. You can change that and use your own domain. And I would be using the profile as charter free user since this is a developer edition org. And then these are just I'm filling the first name, last name, identifier. Yeah. And the second method is the update user. Update user is like when the user has already logged in. So let's say the user updates his email, last name or first name on Google. So you will have to check if that is updated. If that is updated, then only update the user. Otherwise, just return the user. So I'll just quickly copy it and paste it in the auth registration class. Click on edit. Yeah, click on save. Yeah, now we are done. So we will just test our SSO. For testing that, let's just go. So one thing I missed to tell you was we will have to provide in the default scopes. So I have provided email, OpenID, and profile so that we can get the appropriate data from Google, so that we can use the autorect handler class and user can be created successfully. So now what we'll do is we will go to this domain and in a new incognito window, I'll just open it. I have an option to log in using Google SSO. I'll click on that. So I can see the logged in Google accounts. I'll click on this account and you can see my user has been created and I'm logged into the Salesforce org. Now, if I go back to the other window and if I click on users, and you can see this new user has been created. Awesome. And the profile is charter free user. You can change in that Apex class to whenever a new user logs in, which profile he needs. So you can change in that Apex class. So yeah, that's all for today's session. So if you liked it, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'll upload more such videos. Thanks everyone.